So the framework helps understand, design, or evaluate systems. So the framework is helping evaluate your system that is being built to do work. So that is your principles. People hear me all the time and they're like, hey, what are the methods you use? I don't know, pick one. What are you trying to do? Load the tissue, slow joint velocities, high joint velocities, stress the tissue, the tendon, and the muscle junction, so the MTJ. What are you trying to do? And they always get frustrated with me because like, oh, just show me an exercise. Well, pick any exercise you want. Is it achieving what you think it's achieving? That's the point of it. And so this framework that we're going to go into explains or it guides. And so when I was at University of Washington, it was me and my assistant who was a master biomechanist, one of the smartest dudes I've ever been around. He would challenge me nonstop. And I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. Like, we would lock ourselves in our office and read research left and right. I listened to every Keith Barr podcast I got my hands onto. I reached out to him. So this is kind of the epicenter of why we built the framework, is it's not just looking at movement, gross movement, where it's all multi-joint movement. This is a symphony of how the system is being put through this framework to employ fast movement, decel, accel, max velocity. I think a lot of times as strength coaches, we just want guys to run fast. That's the shiny object syndrome. But unfortunately, when they fall apart, you're like, what just happened? We've been doing all this max V work. We've been doing all this assisted work. The tissue's not ready. That's plain and simple. So the system will break at the weakest link. That's tissue. That's tendon, that's muscle, that's the actual MTJ. That just rips, it's like Velcro ripping. So overarching principles, there's a lot of stuff in faint letters here. Are you more volume driven? Are you more frequency driven? Are you more intensity driven? Are you not? Are you using Newton's laws? Force equals mass times acceleration. Are you using velocity equals distance over time? What are you using? Impulse, time, posture. But this is all stuff we got to think about when we build our models, because that is the ultimate ground floor of how we get people to move. Is we get them to achieve these things, and then they go and express it a certain way, and you're like, whoa, that was cool. So in the rehab settings that we are going to talk about, you'll never hear me say, don't do this, don't do this. I will let them achieve what they're going to do. I add constraints. Entry velocities, 5 yards, 7 yards, 10 yards, 50-yard tempo. You got to do it with these certain drills. You got to do it anklings. You got to do it lifting higher over the calf. You got to bleed them out. So they're always hearing me talk to them, and I'll watch. I think this is super important. You guys are probably looking at me like, why did I just come here and I'm reading a word that is so too long for my own ability as a strength coach? Mechanotransduction, all that means is load tissue. That's all that means. Is we add a mechanical load, that doesn't always mean 405 on the back squat. That mechanical load will have some reactions in these cells, tensile, compression, and shear. Tensile is linear getting pulled apart. Compression, that's jumping, that's squatting. And then shear is the tissue getting sheared due to pennation angles. Now you're getting into like physiology. Rate, magnitude, frequency. These all dictate the tissue as well. Rate, so magnitude of rate, think R of D. Magnitude of force, think of just squat, heavy, and slow. They're achieving different things internally. They're achieving things differently in the nervous system. They're achieving things differently in motor learning. So we go mechanical load, the cells sense something, then they get a biological response. Protein turnover, repairing muscle, repairing collagen, tendons, etc. And I won't bore you, but there was an article that was literally a pinnacle for us. It was a 2019 article where they biopsied older individuals done in University of Copenhagen, looking at the fractional protein synthesis rates of ACL, patella, vastus lateralis, Hoffa's pad, bone, etc. We sat there and thought, yeah, ACLs, these ligaments, they turn over very slowly. And it was actually a rude awakening to realize they turn over faster than we think compared to muscle. So I have to talk about this because the framework is built on these principles. And so over here, you're looking at stress and strain, fast versus slow. So when I do something really fast, run full speed, you have a lot of strain. and stress going through our connective tissue. When it's so freaking fast, fluid dynamics take place, and you start getting bulges laterally. That blows apart tissue then. So if they're not ready for it, doing fast movements, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Medium and slow. Slow is the safest. Look at how little stress there is, and look how much strain you're getting. So slow movement to fast movement is the epicenter of this framework. No movement, slow movement, fast movement, dynamic movement is literally the 4 phases of this framework. And we're gonna get even deeper into this. And you're gonna look at me like, that's it? Like, come on, man, there's more than that. No, there's not. Dano can attest to it. Like, this is literally giving the keys to the castle of how to look at tissue from the cellular level. So you're looking at muscle, you're looking at a joint, you're looking at joints together, so limbs to whole body. This over here is looking at when I pick up velocities, degrees per second. So when we sprint, we're going to be well over that, 360 degrees per second in our hip, knee, and ankle. This is telling us eccentric demand of the tissue starts to climb rapidly, 2 to 1. So when we want to do these fast movements, are the athletes prepared eccentrically the stretching of tissue? Yes or no? That's why we start slow, heavier, and start peeling in some faster type movement. But if we just go from slow to the fast, and I'll tell you a little brief story about why we started looking at that is because we're at Washington. We would train guys in dead off season. You're looking at February. They would go outside and sprint. We just squatted them heavy, 400 or 500 pounds on their back. There's a mismatch. The nervous system's getting destroyed by heavy weight, slow heavy weight. Yeah, you're building up force capacities, but then they're gonna go and sprint heavy outside. Fast outside. There's a mismatch. So all we're trying to say is we got to bridge this gap. That's all. I'm not saying you can't squat heavy. It's just that's why you squat heavy and do acceleration work. And you start baking in these more fast movements as the off season starts to take place. Time and posture is the ultimate 2 variables to keep in mind. Time, it's acceleration. That's velocity. That's jerk. Jerk is the instantaneous change of acceleration. And so what that means is you can lengthen time out as long as you want. That's motor learning. I tell you to do a slow 405 split squat across 40 seconds. What are you going to do? Look at me with that face right now. Holy cow. But it's so freaking slow, you can figure out how to actually get through the range of motion without coaches yelling at you, get lower, do this, do that. You're lengthening time out. That's the ultimate barrier for opening up the shutter for motor learning. Posture, once again, slow, heavy movement. Posture, do I want to be here? Or am I folding over? What am I doing? When I was a college strength coach, I'd hear all the time these cues getting thrown around, but nothing changes. It really made me think, like, what are we doing? Are we really, truly influencing the movement by these cues? I don't know. So this is getting into velocity of contraction. Forces over here. Velocity of contractions on the bottom. And so what we want to look at is isometric has higher force capacities than concentric work. Isometric has less force capacities for eccentric work. And so where we would start is right in the middle, dead smack in the middle, isometrics, and then we go up into slow eccentrics, slow concentrics, and then you're getting the fringes to start working, faster movement. But that is now allowing the tissue to remodel itself and be prepared for what's going to take place down the road. And so this work was done on people eons ago, A.V. Hill in the 30s. And then we started reaching out to a name now that people probably know is Dr. Martino Franchi. He is literally a researcher on concentric and eccentric muscle contractions. Reached out to him and he said, why you not talk to me? You were in pro sports. I said, because your work has influenced me, that's why. And he now is a colleague of ours and a friend of mine. I can reach out to him, like, hey, yo, like, this is what's going on. He'll jump on a call with us. He's on Zooms with us all the time, going over stuff. Having that mind of researchers is important. They go through a lot more than we do, and they see a lot more. Eccentric contractions, you need at least 9 weeks to make change. At least 9 weeks. So what that's telling us is eccentric probably shouldn't ever leave. So now we're getting in the joint velocity continuum. Like, how do we program? Because I know that's going to be a question. Is, well, how do you program? It's concurrent. It's not block. And that doesn't mean I don't like block. I'm just saying it's concurrent in the sense that we need this stuff over here These are super important, and it's going to bleed into all of these characteristics here. And on the bottom, that is the actual physiology at play or the biomechanics taking place. So creep, what that means is you're exposing the tissue to a certain time or duration, and it's starting to lengthen. Velocity, we know velocity, that's distance over time. Acceleration is your instantaneous change of your velocity, and then jerk is essentially the acceleration of acceleration. That's what gets people hurt, or that's when they rupture things, is those high jerk moments. So we will stack, we'll go yielding isometric, we'll go EQI, we'll go braking RFD, and we'll go plyometric, all in one session. And I know the question you're probably gonna ask is, why? Aren't you confusing the nervous system? No, because at the end of the day, these humans need all of those traits, slow to fast, for athletic movement. Now you can periodize more heavy, slow stuff for certain guys. You can periodize less heavy, slow stuff, more faster stuff for guys. But they need all of this stuff. These are foundational things that people need to move, to brake, to resist forces, to withstand these massive forces from car crashes every Sunday. So the phases of our return to play and return to sport. And I put this on here, and this is Dano, Derek, and Drew, more of their medical world. I'm just putting it on here because we work together. And so the red is when you have an injury, repair, regen. That's range of motion. That's getting in, doing joint isometrics with our PTs. That's doing any kind of tissue work to restore the range of motion after an injury. And then we start getting in repair, reload, and you start working through these phases. And when we started building this, people kept asking, are there going to be too many phases? Are there going to be too many KPIs? Are there going to be too many things? No. Because what happens is if you build this system the right way to train an athlete, they just start checking off all these KPIs left and right towards the end of their rehab. And so we use force plates, we use 1080 sprint, we use catapult, and then I'll show you something that we're using right now. It's called Stride, and they're IMU pods on feet, so you can look at actual foot path when people are sprinting. And it gives you some granular data, horizontal foot speed, tangential foot speed, vertical foot speed, ground contact time, air time, etc. Case studies, this is why everybody came here, right? Like, we want to see the case studies. So the first one, this is a high-grade proximal hamstring strain. This was told to us grade 2.5 plus. Dude was limping after a practice. He tried to decelerate, got stuck in this position, and just strained his proximal attachment of his hamstring. But that was pinnacle for us to understand, like, why did this happen? That's an RDL. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And so that happened. We were told, shoot, 4 to 6 weeks. He is our Pro Bowl safety and one of our dudes. And we're like, uh-oh, 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know if we'll try and see what we can do. I'll go into a high-grade distal hamstring, another dude for us. We were told 2 to 4 weeks. We were told a BMAX score of 3C, which the BMAX score is 1 through 4. 4 is like complete rupture, and it like literally scared me. And I saw him walking in the next day, and I was like, oh, we're in trouble. So as soon as you see gait being altered, you know something's taking place. And the last one is an ACL rehab surgery guy. He was with our PTs, working through the process, and he had something pop up, which was not their fault at all, and I'm not blaming them at all. He had a moderate grade rec fem strain, same side as his ACL. And so these are cool case studies to kind of go through because these two are in season, this one's not. But I think you can kind of see the process at play here of what took place. Okay, so high grade proximal hamstring strain happened in a Friday practice in red zone, decelerating, roughly 4 to 6 weeks time window. So what do? That's where the framework is the backbone of what we do. Well, we got to start them heavy, slow movement. As Buddy always says, Kyle, just do isos. Cool. So we did that, attacking the proximal attachment. It doesn't mean we have no load. We started loading his hip thrust up with 185, 225, and just bridging against load and holding for 30 seconds. Getting at least 3 rounds of that. He felt better. He told me, Kyle, can I do this every day? I said, yep, we'll do it every day. And I will say this, we have great communication. I told this guy, hey, when do you want to come back? He said, 4 weeks. We're playing in my hometown. I said, okay. Kind of spooked me. But once again, the framework that we put together is the backbone. So injury happened 9/15, so that's September 15th, Friday practice. He did 17 days early loading with the PTs. So he was just with the PTs doing all the rehab, early loading, range of motion type work. October 2nd is when we started loading him again. Like actually in the weight room loading him. So yielding isometrics, EQIs, fast eccentrics. We started doing some sprint mechanics. So that's just holding postures against a strap. And then we started having him doing just like anklings essentially, or low range of motion dribbles. 1080, lateral, linear. And I think the lateral is the hidden gem of the 1080 in my opinion. Then we started loading him more with the reconditioning phase, return to practice. We've added in plyos now. So as you can see concurrently, we're just stacking these blocks. Like literally imagine you're building a brick wall. The slowest phase is literally going to be this phase and this phase. And everyone freaks out. Everybody freaks out. This is too slow, it's too slow, it's too slow. Well, we have to repair the connective tissue. We have to load the connective tissue. We got to keep doing that. And we can load connective tissue every 24 hours, as long as you're doing it a certain way. He returned October 22nd in his hometown. He played at 4.5 weeks, and he ran 20 miles an hour plus in-game, shoulder pads and everything, in his home stadium from where he's from. That's 21 days from when I got him until he played. People always look at me like, dude, like, are you sure about that? Yeah. He did not miss a game after that. That is literally the pinnacle of your work. Do they have any re-injury rates? Yes or no? Do they have any stuff popping up? Yes or no? If they don't, you're on the right track. If they start having things pop back up, you might have skipped steps. And you hear me talk all the time, don't skip steps. Don't skip steps. I text a friend of mine that I worked with at Washington, don't skip steps. The reason is human nature is we want to have guys run fast. So what do? Run them fast. Low load, run fast. Unfortunately, the non-sexy stuff is running against 20 kilos repeatedly. Because it's slow, it's heavy, you got postural constraints. It actually changes kinematics too. He trained with me 16 out of 21 days. So I tell these guys when they get hurt, you and I are gonna be best friends, and we're gonna stay best friends. You're gonna get mad at me, but I'm gonna train you hard every freaking day. They're not gonna be long, but just do what's asked and you'll feel better, I promise. They look at me with glassy eyes and like, man, don't I go 2 days on, 1 day off? No. We have no time to waste, in my opinion. A day off is a wasted day if it's not done a certain way. So I know everyone wants to see videos. And so this is him, October 2nd, running 11 miles an hour. He's in flats, on grass. I told him, hey, I don't want you going higher than your knee joint. Looks pretty good, not bad. We did this repeatedly. Add constraints, add constraints. You can't lift higher than your knee. I want you to just lift over your ankle, over the Nike sock, just cycle. Interact with the ground, keep going. The reason is because if you get into hip flexion too early, you're getting compression, you're getting shearing of the area he strained. And scar tissue does not love that. What that will turn the tissue into is essentially cartilage. And so at the end of the day, we need to make sure we add tensile load through the scar tissue. That's Keith Barr's work. That's Falk Mersman's work. That's all these researchers on tendons right now. Okay, that was October 2nd. October 3rd, here you go. Distance, 8 meters. Speed, 1.69 meters per second. Really freaking slow. But he had 30 kilos. Heavy, slow movement. When you go heavier, it's changing how the humans move. It's loading the quads more. It's allowing him to push into his hips more, which is attacking that area of his glute into extension more, so it's shortening. You're getting that load through there. That's important. I didn't tell him anything other than, hey, I want you just to march, and I want to see it. And so that's what these force traces are down here. They're pretty squirrely right now. And this is power, so force and speed, essentially. And you're just kind of looking to see, like, how is he interacting with the ground? Okay, not great. You're seeing these flat tops. That's not great. So we got to remember, velocity is vector dependent. So you'll get these squirrely peaks if you're having any kind of gyration, any kind of lack of stiffness in the ankles, any kind of side-to-side movement. That's where this 1080 is super important to understand. Like when you look at these force time curves, it's giving us the answers to the test. How are they interacting with the ground? So from the 3rd to the 12th, he went from this to that. That's 9 days. So kind of what I was just saying is if you lay down the groundwork, this will take over. Guys will start expressing it. I didn't tell him to do anything. I just strapped him to 30 kilos and say, hey, we're going. He took off. The athlete will show you guys what they're able to do. When things get a little squirrely is when you tell the athlete to do something that they aren't prepared for or that they don't know they're prepared for. So that's why there's a communication piece to this that's super important. Just march against load. I want to see this. Cool. Do it for a few days. You mix in other movements to it, lateral days. I will highly recommend doing that. If you do too many linear days in a row, too many heavy resistances, they'll probably get some grumbly knees. So get away from that plane of motion and go lateral. Get more knee extension, more hip extension. You can literally artificially engineer the knee extension, hip extension way better when you go lateral. We figured out, University of Washington, guys that got better lateral, their linear went through the freaking roof. I'll say it again. When guys got better lateral, their linear went through the freaking roof. And the reason that is I think because they're actually getting more knee extension to move lateral. And we coach it a certain way. I'm getting abduction. I'm getting knee extension. I'm getting plantar flexion. His acceleration went up. His peak power went up. And his average power went up. What I look for is 2,000 watts, bare of entry. So for me, the system that I will tell you to employ is 20 to 30 kilos. Start heavier. And I think everyone always gets these glassy eyes where it's like, uh-oh, that's really freaking heavy. But it's allowing them, we heard it earlier, when Scott was talking about having their athletes go heavier, it actually made them more symmetrical. You're challenging the nervous system, you're challenging the tissue, you're challenging the motor learning aspect. You actually need more challenge with these souped up athletes to achieve the tasks. And you'll start to see these asymmetries get really close together. So 20 to 30 kilos. Now mind you, this was on the old beast. This was on the big old box. I dragged plates out there, strapped it to the plates. He was at 30 kilos. I actually like that thing. Might need to bring that thing back out. So long story short, I just kept him at 30 kilos. The reason is we had 4 to 6 weeks. I kept him there. He's gonna go lateral one day, he's gonna go linear one day. And then in between those heavy resistance days, he's gonna do just anklings and start lifting higher. 16 miles an hour now. So he's improving. I'm not telling him anything different. He's now expressing it. He's now running a certain way. And I'm not a track coach. I ran track. But I've had to get so much better understanding what these shapes, what these kinematic variables should be like and look like. How did I do that? Reps. Working with these guys. They've trusted me to work with them. Yeah, I have screwed up, but I haven't screwed up to the point that they're getting hurt. So it's allowed me to learn a lot and understand like what these guys are going through. He's gradually getting more amplitude now on the front side. He's starting to lift higher. He's starting to feel better. He's displaying that. The PTs are telling me, hey, his range of motion is getting better too. He can get into M-fakes. He can get into all these things that they tell me. And a lot of times I'm like, holy shit, like these guys are progressing. This is cool. But that's what we want. Communication between medical and strength conditioning, there is a valuable like opportunity there. You all can learn together. Here he is running 20.7, cruising. It was the fastest he ran in over 3 years in a rehab setting. And so what we talk about is if they got hurt running 19 or 18 miles an hour, do we want to keep them there? Shouldn't we try and boost their capacities up higher to make them a little more resilient if they can do it? Yeah, sure. So we're feeding their nervous system and their tissue to be able to do these things and become more efficient. People are always going to ask me, what do you do in the weight room? I stack the days. I'm fortunate to have the variables of I can lift them and run them. And so what you're looking at is this was him going through hip extension work, 185 plus 10, so 205 holds. This dude weighed 188. 30-second holds. He'd walk over here, trap bar deadlift. So what I'm trying to do as a practitioner is get tensile load here. You're getting compression, tensile, and shearing there. You're stretching that area that he strained, testing it, stress testing it. And then he goes into the fast drop catches over here. Reflexive eccentrics. Stu would be happy. We talked to Matt Jordan a few days ago. He was talking about these. These right here, we just started coming up with it at University of Washington because we just looked at formulas. So if we can have more negative velocity down, what does it do to the tissue? Exposes to higher accelerations. You're getting the tissue now to stretch, the tendon to stretch. He needs to feel that. And then it will turn into down, up. But this is just in getting inside our weight room to see like how we'd program. And this is in one session. Here's his max velocity, trending. So 929 right there, 9 miles an hour. He got up to 17, went down to 11, went back up to 20, 15, 20.7. That's game day right there. And so it's not as linear as we like it to be. You have these undulations. That's natural. Pull back a little bit. Give the guy some rest. Let him recover. Push him harder again. Let him go. So like I was saying, I'm pretty fortunate. I had the ability to literally control all the variables for this individual. Weight room, on field, rehab. And then I had to communicate to all the medical people as well. And kind of they were helping me on the back end if there was a loss of range of motion or there were symptoms or something happening. And so we would sit down and talk about this to make sure we're on the same page. So we started using the 1080 right here, 10-3, okay? And we started using the 1080 all the way through 10-13. So we're using it as a special strength exercise, heavy load, 30 kilos, 25 kilos, 20 kilos, for him to realize what he has to do to accelerate against it. That right there is the best thing for these athletes, is it's slowing them down so much they won't get hurt, but they can also understand how hard they have to push against something before symptoms kick in. And I think that's valuable. That's super valuable as a learning lesson, motor learning, because all these guys are going to do is they want to run fast, but as soon as they run fast and they feel something, what do they do? Go in the tank. They shut down. And so we need to make sure the tissue is ready for these demands so that they, like I was saying, I put them in the wild and they run and you're like, whoa, that was cool, 20.6, great, awesome, man. I'm actually thinking, let's get this dude to 21. Now, am I getting dangerous? No, because I know what he's been through. Where things kind of go sideways is if you don't know what athletes have been through and then you get an athlete, you kind of have to feel them out a little bit, right? So, long story short, heavy resistance, linear and lateral for these 12 days to hit that right there. We knew he had to practice at some point in here because that game day was coming up. And so he wasn't just rehabbing, he had to get back into practice too. You're exposing these athletes to these giant tissue demands at a safe manner, slow, heavy resistance, and then you start peeling back the resistance, which allows them to have higher joint velocities. Higher joint velocities have what? Higher eccentric demands, higher stretch. And viscoelastic properties take place. When the speed picks up, the whole system gets real stiff and just bulges, which will blow through areas if it's not prepared.